I was resting in the garden when my husband's friend, Kevin, pushed open the side gate, and nothing about my quiet evening stayed the same. I thought I was in for a nap among the roses. Instead, I ended up learning something about love that I didn't know I'd forgotten. If you think a simple visit can't shake a marriage in the best possible way, wait until you hear what really happened. Before I start, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm curious who's out there with me tonight. Chicago, Phoenix, Charlotte, maybe a small town with one traffic light and a church bell that still rings the hour. Go on, name your city. I'll be looking. The evening air still held some warmth from a long day, and the garden was wearing its best end-of-summer colors. My roses, the stubborn ones that kept defying Georgia clay and my inconsistent watering, bowed their faces into a light breeze. I had kicked off my shoes on the brick path and tucked my feet under me on the old wicker chair that creaked when I breathed too deeply. A mosquito spiral smoked lazily beside the bird bath. The house was quiet in that particular way you only get at dusk, when the day finally leaves your shoulders and the night hasn't claimed you yet. I had closed my eyes to listen. The neighborhood carried on like a gentle radio station, somebody's screen door, a dog offering its opinion about a passing squirrel, a baseball game on in a distant living room. So when the latch of our side gate clicked, I didn't jump. I opened one eye and saw Kevin's outline against the pale evening, a taller shadow framed in honeysuckle. "Margaret?" He lifted a hand, almost sheepish. Gate was open. "Okay if I come in?" He always asked like that, Kevin, with his polite caution. He's one of those men who makes space without announcing that he's doing it. Rugged in a soft way, worn denim shirt, clean hands that still looked like they remembered hard work, the slightest silver at his temples that he joked about when the light hit him wrong. My husband and Kevin had been friends long before I married into their circle. Boyish fishing trips that turned into once-a-year promises, projects in the garage that never quite got finished but gave them 6 Sunday afternoons of laughter to remember anyway. "It's okay," I said, sitting up and smoothing the skirt of my summer dress. "You found me in my natural habitat." He smiled and held up a small tool case, the socket set my husband had lent him. "Returning this before I forget. I was driving by and saw your lights. Figured I might catch him." "He ran to the store," I said. "You know how he gets about charcoal. Swears there's a right kind they keep hiding from him on the top shelf." "That man and his grill," Kevin chuckled, setting the case beside the porch steps. "Mind if I sit a minute? Only if you're up for company." There it was again. Only if. He didn't assume, and I noticed it because so many people do. "Sit," I said, pointing to the bench across from me. "I've got iced tea. Not too sweet. Don't tell anyone." Kevin eased down, carefully, as though my garden had rules he might break if he wasn't gentle. We made small talk at first. He asked about the roses. I told him they were dramatic and ungovernable, which I admired in plants even when I didn't in people. He gave me an update about a fence he was fixing for his neighbor, and I teased him about using a level when everyone else used guessing and prayer. As the sky shifted from honey to pewter, something in the quiet deepened, like a room pulling its chair closer. He glanced at the wind chime, a simple row of seashells I'd strung last year, and then back at me. "Can I say something without sounding odd?" he asked. "You just asked permission," I said, "so you're already ahead." He smiled but didn't rush. "I stopped by to return a tool. But I wanted to see how you were. You've looked tired lately. Not in a bad way, just carrying things." It was a tender, careful observation, the kind that can be mistaken for prying if it isn't wrapped in respect. I looked down at my hands. They did look tired, garden dirt in the lines, a faint scrape from a thorn, the little pale scar by my thumb from a Thanksgiving years ago, when I'd cut the turkey string instead of the knot. "I've been fine," I said, and I heard the hollowness of the word even as I said it. Fine, the pouch where women stuff everything that won't fit anywhere else. "May I try something?" Kevin asked. "It's a listening thing from a group I go to. Sounds silly, but it helped me when I didn't have the words. 2 minutes, timed. One person talks. The other only listens. No fixing, no advice. Then we trade. Only if you want. And we stop if it feels wrong." I blinked. Of all the unexpected things a woman can experience on a summer evening with her husband's friend, a listening exercise wasn't what any headline would sell you. But it was exactly the kind of unexpected I was hungry for without knowing it. Simple, safe, human. "You time it?" I asked, half teasing. "I'm a rule follower," he said, holding up his phone. "Do you want to go first? Or me?" "Me," I said, surprising myself. "But if I ramble, you're sworn to call time." He hit the start button, set the phone face down on the bench, and leaned back, hands folded, eyes steady. Not staring, present. The way you look at a painting not because it's famous, but because something in it is calling your name. What spilled out wasn't dramatic. It wasn't anything a courtroom would consider evidence. I talked about little fatigues that knit themselves into larger ones. The way the washing machine walked across the laundry room like it had somewhere better to be. How the calendar still carried appointments from the spring, ghosts of plans that were canceled and remade until I couldn't tell what had actually happened. The ache behind my right shoulder that arrived after winter and refused to leave. The feeling that I'd become useful to everyone and interesting to no one. I said my husband had been distracted, not unkind, not absent, just elsewhere. The way men get when a worry lodges in them like a pebble, and they believe the virtue is in not limping. I heard the chime of Kevin's timer like a soft bell calling me back. He didn't rush to fill the space I had emptied. He let the words settle, gave them a proper place to sit. "Thank you," he said. "Want to hear my 2 minutes? Or pass?" "Go ahead," I said. He spoke about his quiet house after his divorce, the way a lamp looks when you turn it on for one person, more earnest somehow, trying too hard. He talked about learning to ask instead of assume, about noticing how men our age, he laughed at the phrase our age, and I swatted the air at him, collect projects to avoid collecting feelings. He said he admired my garden because it wasn't perfect. It was honest. It bloomed despite the clay, not because there wasn't any. The timer chimed again, and we both exhaled. 2 people on opposite benches, a safe foot of space between us, and a larger space filled with words neither of us had planned to say when the gate clicked. He picked up the seashell chime and rolled one of the shells between his fingers. "Do you want help rehanging this?" he asked. "The knot's loosening." "Please," I said. "That knot's got better days behind it." He stood and reached up, and the denim at his shoulder stretched. He worked the shell string free, tightened it, then paused. "Is it okay if I step onto the bench to reach the hook?" he asked. "Go ahead," I said, holding the bench steady. He climbed up carefully, and I steadied the wood with my hands. That tiny sense of teamwork, silly as it was over a $20 chime, warmed the air. He didn't rush, didn't show off. When the chime was rehung, he hopped down, and we both listened to it murmur in the breeze, a small, generous sound. "You know," he said, "I didn't only come to return the socket set." He reached into his shirt pocket and brought out a small envelope, cream with my name on it in my husband's handwriting. He asked me to bring this. Said he'd chicken out and overthink it if he tried to hand it to you himself. I stared at the envelope. My name looked new to me written like that. Careful, not hurried the way it looks on sticky notes near the coffee maker. My pulse stepped up its tempo in a way I couldn't blame on the mosquitoes. "What is it?" I asked. "He didn't say," Kevin replied, and then, almost as if he were reporting to the floor, added, "He told me you could open it whenever you wanted. Or not. He asked me to make sure I told you that part. No pressure. No test. No pressure. No test." Hearing those words, I realized how many small invisible tests we give the people we love. Will you notice? Will you ask? Will you see? Will you still be here when I tell you the truth? I slipped my finger under the flap, then stopped. My hands trembled, and I was suddenly aware of Kevin watching not me, but the boundary, asking without asking if I wanted privacy. "Would you mind?" I said, "if I read it when he gets back? I think I want his face in the room." "Of course," Kevin said immediately, setting his palms against his knees as if to anchor himself to the bench. "That's better, actually." We let the choice settle between us like a satisfied cat. The sun erased itself behind the maple, and the garden stepped deeper into blue. I went inside for a second, grabbed 2 citronella candles and a plate of almond cookies I'd hidden from myself in the pantry. When I returned, Kevin had found the old radio on the side table and was turning its stiff dial until a station came in clear enough to hum along. Something from a decade we both remembered differently. His framed by young fatherhood and bills, mine by the thrill of a new mortgage and a hand-me-down dining set we swore would last forever. He set the radio down and glanced at the flat space of brick between our benches. "Do you ever dance up here?" he asked carefully. "My therapist says my brain needs small joys it can't explain. Sometimes I slow step in my living room like a fool, and it helps. I'd never presume, just asking." I laughed softly at the image of Kevin slow stepping alone in his living room, a private waltz with the idea that life could still be kind. "I don't dance much," I said. "Not since my cousin's wedding where my heel made a determined run at freedom." "We can keep both feet on the ground," he said, smiling. "No touching necessary. Just a box step each, parallel. Looks silly, feels good." There was no music in his voice that hinted at anything else. No undertow. Just an offering. I stood, and so did he, with the crisp space between us intact. The radio murmured a steady rhythm, and we each made our quiet squares on the brick. Forward together side, back together side. We must have looked like 2 people practicing to cross a street without stepping on cracks. And yet, I felt my shoulders drop. The tight place behind my heart loosened a fraction. The evening air threaded through us, and even the roses seemed to lean in to watch. After a minute or 2, we sat again, light-headed the way you get when you've remembered to breathe. Kevin reached for his tea, then set it down, as though remembering something. "I'm going to say one thing," he said, "and only because we promised honesty for 2 minutes and forgot to stop." "All right." "You make people feel safe," he said. "That's a beautiful talent. I hope you feel it, too. Safe. Especially here in your own home. With the people who love you." I swallowed. The word safe did a quiet inventory through my body and nodded satisfied. "Thank you," I said. We heard the front door then, the familiar, clumsy entrance of my husband, the rustle of a grocery bag with exactly the brand of charcoal he swore the store hid from him. He called my name, and I called back, and Kevin stood as if the garden had reminded him he was a guest at last call. "Stay," I said. At least long enough to make fun of him for the charcoal. "I'll stay to witness the legend," he said, and we both laughed. My husband stepped out, saw us, and grinned. "I knew it," he said, lifting the bag as if he'd returned from a pilgrimage. They had it. Top shelf, behind the lighter fluid, like they were ashamed. "Hey, Kev." "Returned your tool?" Kevin said, gesturing to the case by the steps. "And I may have destroyed Margaret's belief that the level is optional." "Traitor," my husband said, good-natured. Then his eyes found the envelope on the side table, and something in him softened and went still. Not fear, more like readiness. "I asked him to bring that," he said to me, voice steady but quiet, like the moment right before you step into a lake and the water hasn't decided whether to startle you. "We can read it later if you want. Or now. Whatever makes you comfortable." In the garden's blue light, with Kevin a polite distance away and our home breathing around us, I felt the shape of the evening fully. It had changed, not into something forbidden or secret, but into something unexpectedly honest. A man who wasn't my husband had offered me listening, not rescue. A friend had delivered an envelope, not a temptation. And the man I'd married had sent words ahead of himself like a lantern, asking me to meet him where the light was softer. "Let's light the grill first," I said, my hand resting of its own accord on the envelope, not opening it, just acknowledging it. "Let's eat on the porch. Then we can sit with it. Together." "Together sounds good," my husband said. He reached for the matches with the dignity of a knight selecting his sword. Kevin laughed and warned him about the wind direction, and the three of us moved toward the mouth of evening. One man coaxing a flame from stubborn charcoal, another man minding the bench as if it had become important, and me standing between them with an envelope that felt like a small, quiet future resting against my palm. The roses breathed their steady perfume, the seashells murmured, and somewhere in the neighborhood a child shouted that a firefly had landed on his sleeve. If you're still listening from whatever city you're in, know this. I started this evening certain of my weariness and a little muddled about my marriage. I ended it choosing to read a letter with the person who wrote it, thankful for the friend who handed it over like you hand someone a key when they are finally ready to open their own door. And if you don't think something as ordinary as a garden can change a life, ask the woman who sat there barefoot and learned the oldest truth all over again. That love, when tended, can surprise you right where you live. The grill finally caught, sending up the first curl of smoke into the evening air. My husband crouched over it with his usual determination, muttering as though coaxing the coals into obedience. Kevin leaned against the porch rail, easy but respectful, not trying to own the moment, just keeping company in that quiet way he had. Dinner was simple but good: grilled chicken, a bowl of peaches I had brushed with honey, iced tea with just enough lemon. We ate together on the porch, the air cooling as the light sank into a deeper blue. The envelope sat by my glass the entire time, as though it was listening in, patient and waiting. My husband glanced at it once or twice, but didn't push. Kevin never looked at it directly at all. He knew his role: deliver, step back, let it be. After we finished eating, Kevin stood to leave. He placed the empty plate by the door, wiped his hands, and gave us both a kind smile. "Mission complete," he said. "Thank you for letting me drop in." My husband clapped him on the shoulder, and I gave him a nod that meant more than words. The gate clicked shut behind him, the seashell chime giving one soft note as if it were signing his departure. Then it was just the two of us and the envelope. I held it for a long moment before sliding my finger under the flap. The paper inside smelled faintly of our desk drawer: pencils, old bills, everyday life. His handwriting was steady, deliberate. The letter wasn't long, but it carried weight. He wrote about his silence these past weeks, how it wasn't distance from me, but fear of